Hi there. Welcome to Turning Point Stories and Strategies from the World of Business. I'm your host, Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun. And I'm really excited today to have joining me Arshad Merali, CEO at Rivie. Thanks for joining me today.
Good day, Blaine. Good to have you. Thank you.
So just a little bit of context here. Both our companies were just in an accelerator with Intuit. And, I love these types of programs. And one of the biggest reasons I love them is you get to meet other entrepreneurs that are solving some really interesting problems as well. And it was just such a great experience getting to know you and so many other people from the cohort.
Yeah, I mean, there was 8 of us in the cohort, and I can say that, I've just met 7 new friends that I know I'm going to be doing things for the rest of my life. It was phenomenal because everyone was just great people. We all had an interest in helping each other be successful. And it's really exciting to see when someone has a great announcement or something else happens to them. I feel like I'm part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was such a good cohort because not when you get into things like this, you don't always get like a group that just have these sort of shared vision and shared excitement and everything. And so I think it was a little bit of a special group this time, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, such a great experience. And now we get to chat even after the program's over. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, before we go down the path and talk a little bit about what you're doing today with Rivie, just wanted to go back to, a little bit in your past and where you got started in business. What really got you going down this path?
I've been, I would say, an entrepreneur all my life. From the first time when I started running my own newspaper route. And then I did landscaping, cutting lawns. In late high school, we were selling cell phones. We were building PCs and selling them online. So always up to something. In the final years of university, kind of like started up a company that was printing bank checks. I was able to convince the person at Warner Brothers to give us a license to do the Looney Tunes characters on bank checks.
Nice.
So I had a great time trying to do that. And then, it just kind of went from one thing to another. It was nothing that was planned. My father owned restaurants as I grew up. I had to work in them. I hated it. Never wanted to be in the restaurant business. Somehow in the mid to late 90s, I started up an ISP. And when I sold that, a good friend of mine from school asked me to invest with him in Second Cup franchises. So started doing that. That led to some restaurants, and all of a sudden I was in restaurants. And then I went back into technology. We started up a consulting company. I went to work for another software company. So just so many different things that happened.
Yeah.
And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I just was in the state where I owned a bunch of restaurants. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This is not where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking about, where do I want to go? What do I want to do in my life? And I really felt like I wasn't happy. I wanted to do something that I felt like I was adding value and that I was solving some big problems.
Yeah.
So I started to kind of, divest myself of what I had and started to look for a problem to solve. And that was really the genesis.
Yeah. Well, let's and before we fast forward to that, I actually want to dig in a little bit on the experiences along the way that led you to sort of identifying the problem. So you it was interesting because it's a lot like other entrepreneurs I talk with. Is so much is about opportunity, right? Like I think we're always on that lookout for opportunity, and I feel sometimes the same way that I never really planned anything. You just sort of, you're moving along and you recognize opportunity and you just sort of grab it. And so tell me a little bit about moving from into the franchising space. Like that's sort of one of those things that kind of piqued my interest a little bit as you're moving along, like you're going into the franchising space with Second Cup, and then how you went on from there. What was that sort of transition like to be able to, go back into, I guess, or go into the restaurant business?
So, I mean, I looked at it more as a investor at that stage. I was just looking at it and say, okay, we're putting money in, we're going to build and own a couple of franchises, and we're going to operate it kind of as a high level conglomerate, if you will. Yeah. We'll place a manager in each location. We'll give them a budget. We'll oversee what they're doing. But really, I started to learn more about the coffee business, and I started to get more passionate about coffee and the culture of coffee. Mm-hmm. And I've been following it ever since, when we're now into this, what they call the third wave coffee industry. So
Yeah.
it really opened up my eyes, not only to the business side of it, but to the culture and just how passionate people are.
Yeah.
That was exciting, to see people showing up that they're just there because they love the coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and I identify with that because when my wife and I, we basically get to any new city, we're trying to find the local independent coffee shop and test them out and see what they're like. And just this past, past kind of holiday season when we were locked inside with COVID, we decided we got to make some better coffee. So now we've got one of these Mocha Master, Techniform Mocha Master. Like we were going all out. We got fancy little grinder, and we order in our coffee beans from local roasters, and they come deliver to our house and all that. And so I relate to that because once you start going down a path and you kind of see that the differences in the quality, and I think that's something with almost everything in my life that it's. I always like its experience and its quality and its those little independent sort of shops and artisans and stuff I love. And so I really connect on that level with the coffee and the whole culture there,
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like once you're into it, the difference in the quality, and you go into a shop that's, roasting their own beans, and it's like you're in heaven, right? The aroma there is enticing. The atmosphere just makes you feel like you want to just sit down, grab a cup, and just relax and not worry about any of the stresses of your daily life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because that, from an entrepreneur perspective, having people have that experience, like I've never, I had a creative industry business before this, and now I'm in software and that I appreciate those things, but I've never actually owned a business where you're selling the experience, and you can see that if you can create that feeling and that atmosphere, I imagine you're likely to be successful. But how do you go about doing that, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. A coffee shop is very much like a restaurant, and I always say that people, when they go out, they're going out for an experience. They're not going there for some commodity that you're hawking. They want to experience everything that you have to offer, and so the product is just one component, but it's the atmosphere when you walk in the door. What does the place look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Do you have good music? Do you make me kind of feel like, I love this vibe? And then it's the service. Like you got to have people that are passionate, that care, that want to serve, that want to just welcome people. It's like you're bringing people into your home, and you're saying, welcome, come on in, take a seat, relax, put your feet up. Don't worry, we're here to take care of whatever you need. And that's why I go out, right? When I go to a restaurant or anywhere I go, I'm not going because I can't cook at home, or I'm not going because of whatever reason. I'm going because I want to experience what they have to offer. I want to be immersed in that environment.
Yeah. And I never thought I'd be sort of a regular at places, but the older I get, the more I'm a regular at places. And there's this little Italian sort of pizzeria in Edmonton here that Rosso Pizzeria. I'm giving them a plug because we, outside of COVID, we're there probably several times a week, and we got a brunch. We'll bike over there on the weekends. But one of the things that we've been going there for years, even before it was Rosso, it was a little coffee shop before then, sort of evolved into Rosso. And the interesting thing that I found that said a lot to me and still says a lot to me is the staff are almost the same. The staff have been there for 10 years, and they're a lot of them are students because it's not far from the university. So you think that'd be a very transitory position, and they just stay. They just stick around. That always intrigued me is there's something about it's the atmosphere. Everything they have in there is quality, from the coffee to the beer to the wine to the food. Everything is top quality and independent and carefully selected. But it's the staff that make the place. And I was wondering how do you find staff and identify them in a service industry like that are going to, and how do they stick around in a place like that?
So it's definitely challenging. But what I found is once you find one or two good people, they bring in people. they have friends that also share similar values. And I mean, I'd always say to people that I want to hire people that have mortgages, because they come to work for a couple of reasons. Obviously they need to work because they have bills to pay.
Yeah.
But you want that type of mentality. You want the person that they're not only passionate about what they do, but they feel it if they don't come in financially.
Yeah.
The ones that don't feel it, I find, are the ones that don't care enough. The ones that those are the ones that are not passionate. And it's very difficult to be in an environment where you've got this constant in and out, because you're wasting tons of time and money training people that you don't even know if they're going to stick around.
Yeah. And then I suppose if they're, it probably all goes together. If they're not likely to stick around, they might not even be people you want to stick around, because they it's got to be a tricky, I'm guessing, like I sort of know how to find people in our industry, but a service industry like that, how do you find people that are going to represent you well and serve your customers and treat them right? Like, how do you do that?
So a couple of things. Number one, always be interviewing. Whether you need to fill a role or not, I'm always interviewing people and talking to people. If I find someone great, I find a role for them. So I bring them into the fold.
Yeah.
I like this concept of hire slow, fire fast. And so I always want to take my time trying to find people and talking to people to make sure they're the right fit culturally.
Yeah.
And if they're not, I make a quick decision and part ways, because it doesn't make sense for us or for them to be in that environment. And then also the last part is, once you start going out, like I eat out all the time. I'm always going to different places. And I like to network. I talk to the servers. I talk to different people. I let them know what I'm doing. I say, hey, if you got any friends that are looking, that are, share the same types of feelings that you do, please introduce me. We're always looking for good people. And I found that to be the most powerful way to get people, because I've had some people that have said, hey, you know what? I'm looking for a second job. Do you mind if I can come in and work a couple of days? No problem. What I don't want to do is I don't want to feel like I'm trying to poach them. I want to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. If you know anyone that's looking, please let me know.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you had a couple of franchises, and then I think you said you went into restaurants after that. Was that from your experience with Second Cup and it just kind of reignited that, or was it just opportunity? How did you end up there?
It was partly opportunity. My business partner at the time, him and I loved to travel, and we were doing lots of things. And in our travels, I think we were in New York, and we went to Nobu, and we're like, hey, why is there not a place like this in Toronto? And I said, yeah, you know what? I was thinking about that because I was in London a year earlier, and I went to the Nobu there, and I had a great time. And now we're talking about it here. I'm thinking, man, we should find a place like this in Toronto. So we were looking around, trying to find a place that was that kind of a vibe, because we just enjoyed the vibe of it. It was cool. It was neat. And there wasn't anything. So we just said, maybe we can do it. And so that kind of set us off on this mission to find a place, find a chef, find a couple of people that would share the vision with us. And oddly enough, it was easy to find 6 or 7 of us that all had the same idea, that we all shared the same passion. We kind of put together all of our different thoughts and came up with this new concept. And then a year and a half, 2 years later, we opened up a great sushi restaurant.
Nice. So I now the restaurant industry, like obviously I go eat at them all the time, and well, not during COVID, but outside of that, we're kind of foodies here a little bit. But what I don't know from an entrepreneur side, I'm really curious. How are restaurants like that typically funded? Is it a lot of like the partners all put in a bunch of cash? Is there bank loans? Like, well, I'm just curious, like what is a typical way a restaurant gets off the ground? Because it seems like massive upfront costs and kind of a risky venture, right?
Yeah, so it's a combination of both. The 6 of us, we all put in an equal amount of money, and then we went to the bank and got a loan for the other 50%.
Okay, yeah.
So there's bank programs that are federally guaranteed, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so the banks are more open to funding.
Okay, but that makes sense, because I know it's a excuse me, a bit of a risky venture. I always wondered how how that worked, but it would make sense because you're generating a lot of jobs and a lot of, the economy and everything as well. So
Yeah, and the interesting thing about like a restaurant or coffee shop, stuff like that, they're pretty much cash flow positive on day one.
mm,
So as long as you can get the money to build it, once you open the doors, then you've got cash flow coming in, which allows you to take care of your expenses and pay down your loan and so forth.
yeah.
You're never in a receivables position.
Okay. Yeah. No, I guess that's a bit of a foreign to me, because like I remember my first business, we were, profitable basically the day you opened the doors, because we had signed a contract and it's like, well, now we got to deliver on the thing, but you don't have the cash yet. So, that's
Yeah.
maybe why I'm doing a little bit of what I'm doing now, but it's just, you're constantly chasing the cash. So it's a little bit of a different world there.
Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you the story. Talk about cash. We had a consulting company in the late 90s and we were doing pretty good. We had 4 customers. We had 20 guys doing projects, and we're getting paid regularly. And we thought, okay, let's kick this up a notch. We started going after Walmart, and that was a 1.5-year sales cycle. We finally got a deal with them. We started the project. We had to fly out 4 or 5 guys every week. So our deal was, they're going to pay us every couple of weeks when we invoice them.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, we didn't get our first payment for 6 months. And we were lucky that we had the cash flow from the other businesses.
Yeah.
But it was dwindling really fast, and we were down to the wire when we finally got paid, and it was like, man, thank God we got this check.
Yeah,
because it could have just broken us.
Well, and that's the thing that, like, for all the things that are regulated in the world, and somehow you virtually have no recourse if a big organization doesn't want to pay you. It's not like you're going to sue them. You'll never, you'll
You
just
got the money to go through that.
Yeah, so there's really not much recourse, and yet the amount of I wonder if I'm sure someone's done the research on it, but the amount of money that just literally goes unpaid, but the amount that's overdue and the amount of businesses that are the growth is slowed, and let alone ones that shut their doors because of late payment. It's criminal, right? But it happens in almost every industry all the time, and it's just
Unfortunately, you're absolutely right.
yeah. So I want to hear just a tiny bit about this, because I do love sushi, just my own curiosity. What was it like setting up, like, because that's not like, I'm assuming it wasn't a franchise. It was something that you guys just sort of envisioned, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, it was an amazing time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had lots of fun. Our meetings were always at different sushi restaurants, so we were eating sushi all over the city just to check out the competition.
Yeah.
We went to non-sushi restaurants to look at the design and what they did and the layout. We met with a bunch of different designers. We signed up a phenomenal designer that did an amazing job for us. And he really got into it. He really, helped us understand what we're doing, our branding, designed our logo for us. He was such an integral part of our team.
Yeah.
And that really made it more exciting, but also he took a lot of the work off of our plate. So he made it easier for us.
Yeah.
He's the one that had all the vision. He's the one that came up with the colors, the look and feel. And we were just blown away at every corner.
Nice.
So for me, it was phenomenal. And what it did was it really taught me to look closely at designs when I go to restaurants. And it's funny because when I go to a restaurant now, I check out their plates, I check out the lights, I check out, the furniture. I'm looking at everything, every single detail, because to me, it's all those details that make up that experience. And I want to know how much thought has gone into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a bit of a design. Well, I have 2 design degrees. I minored in industrial design. So I'm naturally like that. I go into a place and I'm always checking everything out too. Just totally different reason, but I love that stuff. So was that the only restaurant you had, or did you expand, or where did you go sort of from there?
Yeah, from that we started investing in a couple of different restaurant concepts, and it was funny because then I went and while I owned the restaurant, I went to work for a software company. I was there for a few years, and then when I left there, I went to another software company. Meanwhile, we were investing in different restaurants, so I was kind of doing both at the same time. Because my heart is more in technology. The restaurant was just, an investment. It was kind of fun. It was my my side hustle, if you will, at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I think it was 97 or 98 when we had a consulting company. The office space that we had, there was a beautiful space downstairs. I said to the landlord, I said, hey, I saw this beautiful concept in the UK. I think it'd work amazing here. And we were just in the process of selling off our consulting business. So the timing was right for me. So I kind of, switched gears and did that and worked that for a few years. And then I got approached by a landlord to do that concept in another location. So we built that. And it was just opportunistic, right? Like you said earlier, something just came up. I said, okay, let's just jump into it. And then after a few years, maybe 7, 8 years, I started thinking, man, it's not where I wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think you get, a little more gray, and you start, it starts to become less about opportunity and more about, experience and contributing and these things that, I don't feel like it's, just sort of grabbing onto things anymore. It's like, kind of, this is what I want to do. And
Yeah.
it's a interesting transition, I think, from the sprinting all the time and always looking for the next thing. Right.
That's exactly how I felt. I just felt like I was running from one thing to another. I was putting out fires. I wasn't planning. I wasn't thinking strategic.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, brought me around to what is it that I really want to do with my life?
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get into Rivie, like, I guess, what are some of the experiences you had along the way that ended up leading to where you went, right?
I mean, everything I did always was focused around people. If we were in the restaurant business or the cafe business, we were serving people and we had to take care of our people that were working for us. If we were in the consulting business, we were still serving people. We were helping them solve their business problems. And it's always been about relationships. So to me, I've always believed that to be successful, you have to have strong relationships. You have to really empathize with your customer. You have to learn their pain points and you have to live it with them. And so I think what happened was, as we started to build more restaurants, I wasn't able to be on the front lines anymore. We started building more staff and they were doing the day-to-day things. And I was doing more of the back end things. And I didn't really want that. I didn't want to be in a situation where I felt I was disconnected. And so it really just started to feel like this wasn't for me anymore. It wasn't something that I was passionate about getting up in the morning and running to. And then I started feeling more, well, I don't want to deal with that. That's so annoying. This is such a problem. Why do I have to deal with it? And that's kind of when I started thinking I'm doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I was putting in a lot of time. I was doing a lot more work than I wanted to. And I felt that was affecting the time I wanted to be with my family. And so all those things combined really just were the impetus that say, hey, this is not good for you. Let's look at something different.
Yeah.
And so I kind of took all of the lessons learned and I started saying, okay, how do I take everything that I know and utilize that in something that I want to do going forward that I can feel good about, but I can also feel that I'm doing something that's solving a problem that means something to people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's a good time to kind of dive in. Like, what is that problem that you're solving? The one that you identified that you're tackling today with Rivie?
So when I started feeling this challenge and I started to say, okay, I got to go on a walkabout. I got to take time to think about what it is I want to do. And I spent some time looking at investing in other companies and spending time with different angel investors and stuff. And what I realized was, while I enjoyed working with other companies and partnering with other businesses and helping them grow, I really wanted to do my own thing. At my core, I'm a starter upper type of person.
Yeah.
And so I started to travel around looking for what are the problems that are out there. And after a year, it kind of just hit me that everywhere I went, I came across people that were living paycheck to paycheck. And it didn't matter if I was in, Tokyo or if I was in Mumbai, if I was in London. It was constant. And it made me think more about the problem. And then I had this other realization that I always had employees that had this problem. My staff would always come to me and say, can I borrow $50 till payday? Or I have people that say, I can't come to work today because I don't have money for bus fare. And as the employer, I found it annoying because I felt, well, why are you bringing your problems to me? Like, I've got my own problems. But when I was outside of this, it was like an epiphany, because I was like, I had an out of body experience, and I was like, man, I'm part of the problem. I started thinking, why are we paying them every 2 weeks? Why are we making this difficult for them?
Yeah.
And because I came from this background where I knew about payroll and I knew about labor management and time tracking and all that sort of stuff, I knew that there was no technical reason why we had to do it. And as I started to talk to people and consult with friends and some of my peers, I asked people, like, why are you paying your employees every 2 weeks? The most, well, gee, I don't know. That's the way we've always done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really started to, come more apparent as I was peeling back the layers of the onion. I started to see that there's no reason why we're doing this. And so I started asking, okay, well, what would happen if we paid everybody faster? What would happen if we paid them every day? What would that look like? And how would that affect people? I mean, depending on the statistics you hear, on average, 50% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And in the States, it's like 75%.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
the problem is huge. You and I may not think about it every day, but it's pretty obvious that someone we know is in those circumstances.
Yeah.
And I talk to people that they make $100,000 a year, but they've got their mortgage, they've got their car payments, life insurance payments. It all adds up, and if they didn't get their paycheck, what's going to happen? Things will start falling apart after a little while.
Yeah.
So there's this misconception that only people that are paid minimum wage or whatever are suffering paycheck to paycheck, but it happens for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But what happens then is, they're suffering financially. They're getting dinged with NSF charges. They're paying penalties. They're paying high interest rates. All these things add up. And it's the fact that they don't have the money that they're waiting for that's causing all of this.
Yeah.
So the thinking is, okay, if we can speed up that velocity of pay, get them paid faster, that solves one of the problems, but not everything. It's like the chicken and egg situation, because now that they have the money, do they know what to do with it? Are they going to spend it because it's in their pocket?
Yeah. Yeah.
So really, the ultimate solution is not only just to give them the money faster, but to equip them with the tools so that they can better understand and manage that money. And that's kind of me going full circle, because before I thought about paying them faster, I thought about, okay, if they're living paycheck to paycheck, let's help them understand their money. Let's help them manage that money better. But as I started thinking about that and understanding that problem, I realized, again, that's only part of the problem. That's part of the solution, because we don't have control of the money coming in.
Yeah.
And that's really what brought us to becoming a payroll company, was because then that gives us the ability to control that money as it comes in. Then that allows us to do what we want to do and achieve our overall objectives.
Yeah. It's interesting because well, it's a cash flow issue. It's just like the Walmart issue, except on a much smaller basis, right? So like I identify with right away. It's nothing that I've ever thought of. And so this is I'm guessing quite a new idea, this sort of being able to, and part of it is probably because the technology actually make it possible today in some reasonable way. But is this just is this just something you've kind of come up with, or is there, have you started to see other places kind of pick up on the same sort of thing? Or
Yeah, it's interesting because over the past few years, we've seen this new industry pop up really much in the States, known as earned wage access. And basically what we're seeing is there's a bunch of companies that are coming in, and they're kind of like sitting, if you will, as a third wheel in the payroll evolution. So you've got the employer that pays the employee. You've got the payroll company that does the payroll processing for that employer. And then now you've got these earned wage access companies, which are basically funding employees access to their earned wages before payday. So there's all different models. In some models, the employer pays the fee. In some models, the employee pays the fee. But basically, there's a fee that's being paid to this company to allow them to facilitate, if you will, that loan or that advance. And then so the employee gets access through an app usually to a portion of their earned wages. So let's say, for example, you're in a 2-week pay cycle, you're on day 5 and you've worked 3 shifts. So you've earned $300, let's say. So the earned wage access company will say, okay, well, we'll let you borrow $200 of that for a fee. You pay that fee and then they'll put the money in your bank account. And then when your employer runs payroll, the payroll company will take that money and send it to the other company to repay that advance. So you're seeing a ton of uptick on it, which really shows that the problem is huge.
Yeah.
But the concern I have with that is really it's like a modern day payday lending.
Yeah.
And we're forcing the people that need the money the most to pay to get paid.
Yeah.
So that concept really doesn't resonate for me, and it's not why I want to get into business.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want the employees to be paid their payroll after taxes like they would normally. We initially wanted to do it every day. And then after, going through in an iteration and talking to people, we did a little bit of pivot and we said, okay, well, our whole thinking was we don't want a business to force an employee to have to get paid every 2 weeks. But unknowingly, we were saying, we're going to force you to get paid every day. So after realizing that, we said, okay, well, let's make it flexible. Let's say the employee can choose when they want to get paid. And if Sally wants to get paid every day, no problem. If Tommy wants to get paid every week, that's okay. And I've talked to employees that are currently getting paid every 2 weeks, and they've said that they'd love to get paid every month because they've got their finances set up. They don't have to worry about anything. And that's great. So now what we're saying is with this flexible payroll model, it's payroll gets run, taxes get deducted, but you choose how often you want to get paid.
Yeah. And so what is the, like, obviously I see from the employee perspective, how impactful that could be. What sort of response is coming from the business community, and how are they, is it just sort of, they see the value of it, or is it they can attract better, staff, or what are you seeing from that side to get them engaged?
Yeah. So if you think it from a HR perspective, I liken flexible payroll to a benefit that any company would offer to its employees. Mm-hmm. I say that payroll is the OG of benefits. The first benefit that ever came out was I want to get paid. Yeah. And then, employers started thinking of what are the other things that we can do to attract and retain employees. So maybe we'll offer them stock option plans. Maybe we'll offer them RSP matching programs. Maybe we'll offer them healthcare, massages, whatever. Yeah. So this is, from that perspective, another benefit that you can offer your employees, which can be used to attract and retain your employees. But also, we hear a lot about mental wellness and mental fatigue. Mm-hmm. And financial health ties into that. And, there's tons of statistics that document that employees are stressed financially. Mm-hmm. And they're coming to work and they're bringing their stresses with them to work, and they're taking up their employer's time dealing with their personal finances. So there's tons of lost productivity. And I think, the wise employer recognizes that if they can invest a little bit and help their employees improve their financial circumstances, their employees are going to become better workers. They're going to come to work, be more productive, and that's going to improve the bottom line. Now, from a purely financial perspective, payroll is one of those things that as a small business, I know I hate doing. I've always put it off because it was just annoying to do payroll when it came time. And I've seen that problem is more exemplified in larger companies. And in my experience, the larger the company, the more people they have in their payroll department, the more manual processes they have doing payroll. And so as part of what we've developed within our platform, we really want to take away those manual processes. So when we do that, there's a cost saving to the business because they no longer have to pay people to do this manual work, mm-hmm. approving timesheets and approving payroll and doing all this sort of stuff. And so that frees up time and resources. And depending on the business, they can either redeploy some of those resources to do things that are, more high value tasks, or they can cut some of their labor and say, okay, well, we don't need to have 10 people reviewing timesheets because now the software can do it. The technology is there. And if you think about this whole concept of, robotic process automation, businesses are doing it in every vertical that they can, trying to squeeze out as much as they can and utilize technology to automate as much as those manual processes. And so payroll is kind of that last frontier that they haven't squeezed out of yet. And so we're giving them that chance to do that. And then what also happens is, because in payroll, you have, with a lot of manual work, you get errors. And so once we eliminate those errors, we no longer have to do rework. A big part of payroll is, I got to fix someone's paycheck. I didn't pay them properly. I overpaid them. I underpaid them. And so when you do that, the employee, if they've lost $100 on their paycheck, now they have to wait 2 weeks or whatever your payroll cycle is to get that back.
Yeah.
Very few businesses will actually cut a manual check and say, okay, here's the money that we owed you. We're sorry. We'll pay it to you now, and then we'll deduct off your next check. So again, you're just creating more manual work. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do is we want to take all of that manual work off the table and just make it kind of a set it and forget it. And then the last part that some accountants really buy into is, when you're an employer that's running payroll every 2 weeks, you're accruing this payroll liability on your books from start to finish, but you're not accounting for it. It's just somewhere in the nethers. And what we're doing is we're taking that liability off your books. We're absorbing it within our system, so that from a liability perspective, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you're the CFO and you're interested in understanding your liabilities and where you sit on your books, we can relieve that problem for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's that coming from my side, because I do payroll, every couple of weeks, well, twice a month. So not bi-weekly, we do twice a month. And I'm doing payroll, I'm doing it manually, and it's brutal, right? And so a lot of things that you said, like, just for me, as taking it off my plate and just making it easier, is really compelling for a business owner. And then I can see, when you're a little bit bigger and you have a department and there's mistakes and problems and manual and costs, also very compelling. Yeah. But the thing that I think really you really hooked me a little bit with was the idea that like, benefits are expensive for a business. Mm-hmm. And like you said, this could be the biggest benefit, and it's really low cost. Like, I'm not sure there really is a cost. Like, once you put that first 2 weeks out and now you're going, I don't know if would be any cost. It's not like they're keeping your money for 2 weeks and making a whole pile in the stock market. It's sitting in a bloody bank account, right? Like, so yep. There really isn't a cost. And with all those other benefits, there's costs involved, right? So totally. It's interesting. Yeah.
And to your point, you say you pay your employees twice a month. Every business owner that I talk to, when I say, okay, how often you pay your employees? And then the next question is, why? And a lot of times, I'll let you answer this, but a lot of times it's been, I don't know, my accountant told me to do that way.
Yeah, I'm guilty I've always done it that way. And I don't know, somebody told me probably around 1999, that's what you do. And, the only changes we've had in payroll was, I think at one time in my last business, I think maybe we were doing bi-weekly, now we do semi-monthly. Literally, that's the only change.
Yep.
And if you ask me, like, why don't you do it weekly or daily or whatever? It's like, because it's so painful even doing it twice a month that I don't even want to do that.
Well, it's interesting, because I talked to one business owner and he says he does payroll monthly. And I asked him, well, why did you choose monthly? He goes, because I hate doing payroll. I want to do it as least as possible.
Yeah, it's true. It's just a headache. And I know, like, well, and obviously, like, we've talked before, I've got to take a look at Rivie and see if this might, fix this for me, because it's just, it's not a major deal. It's just a pain. It's just a bit painful to do. And it's always, it's a Friday afternoon when you're like, oh man, what's on my schedule here? Cause I have to get to payroll, and it's just, it's a pain. Right. So I think there's definitely you're fixing some severe pains on both sides, and you have this flexibility and these other benefits that the other payroll companies they don't do. Because I've used, like, you and I talked before, I've used another payroll company who shall remain nameless, and
Yeah.
it was honestly, I think it was more painful than doing it manually. I was like, well, forget that. I'll just go back to manual. So
Yeah.
there's a big opportunity there, of course, as well. So
Yeah. It's funny because, we haven't really seen any new innovation in payroll for the past 40 years. The most exciting thing was in the 70s with the innovation of direct deposit. And if you look at new payroll companies, there's a lot of new payroll companies out there that are coming out, and some of them are doing some interesting things, but they're still doing payroll the old way. They're putting lipstick on a pig. They're making it look really cool. Their UX is awesome, but they're not really reinventing payroll. They're just doing it in a nicer, more beautiful way.
yeah.
And so that's kind of where we differentiating. We're really rethinking the way people do payroll, and we're really making people question, why do we do payroll this way, or do we still need to do it this way? Why is it done?
Yeah.
And I think with employees, I think we're going to see a change. We see this demand for $15 an hour minimum wage that's running through the country. Recently, we're seeing struggles with healthcare providers and nurses and stuff like that, in demands to pay them better. And it's amazing because the focus has been on let's pay them more money, but the lower hanging fruit is let's pay them faster.
Yeah.
Paying them more money could be a solution, but it's a band-aid, because we're still putting them in the situation where they're waiting to get paid. And I keep on saying, what's the right thing to do for employees? We see with COVID that, the word of the year has been empathy. And as employers, what are we doing to empathize with our employees? And some employees are of the perspective that their employees are fine. They're well paid, so they don't have to worry about it. But they haven't asked their employees, what would you want? So again, it's a little bit of education, right? It's about getting people to understand that this is not only the right thing to do, but it's the best thing to do for the business, because there are significant benefits that the business would get out of it.
Yeah, and number one, being that you're like you mentioned, you and I both know how important it is to have really great employees, but you also, like you said, you need to have them dialed in. You don't want them under stress. You need them effective, and especially now, it's harder now for businesses than maybe ever before, for the businesses that are small and have been around for a while here. And maybe not talking the big multinationals. Maybe it's the same with them. But it's a really difficult time, and that means that you need employees to be dialed in and really on point, because so many businesses are on a razor's edge right now too. So there's a compelling reason all around for this.
Yeah, I mean, your employees are the heartbeat of your organization, and some employees that are working are stressed, not only financially, but they're not sure if they're going to have a job tomorrow. Everyone's on pins and needles because of what's happening with the economy. In Canada, we're a little fortunate because we have some government programs to soften the blow. But boy, I'm so worried about what happens when those programs finish.
Well, yeah, and being like a cash flow company like ours, and we've got clients all over the place, but it's from region to region and country to country, and they're all worried about when this runs out, and is the money going to run out before COVID runs out, right? No one really knows. It's the projections all change daily, and everyone has a different perspective on it. But no matter, it still comes down to, like, my business, my sector, when will things start going back to normal? And for some of them, it'll be 22 before they're back to any sort of sense of normalcy. So it's a really tough time. It's a tough time all around. But I think there's some really compelling reasons all around as well for your service. So I think you've hit on something really, really topical and really innovative. And that's, that's why Intuit picked you out of the crowd there too, right? So
Yeah, I mean, you know what? This Intuit program was phenomenal. My hat's off to the crew at Intuit and Highland Beta. They just did an amazing job putting the program together. And like I said earlier, being able to meet you, Blaine, and the rest of the cohort was probably the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, it was just such a, and the only regret I have is that we're all stuck inside and we're not sitting on a patio. I would have to fly out, but sitting on a patio in Toronto having a beer, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be doing that in the next number of months here, and I'm at some point more than willing to get on a plane and come and see everybody and have a beer
Yeah.
with you guys.
I'm looking forward to that day. It'll be amazing.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you if they want to find you and learn about Rivie, of course, as well, because this is a really terrific tool. I want you guys to all take a look at it. This is something that can help a lot of businesses.
Yeah, definitely take a look at our website at rivie.com. So it's spelled RIVVI.com. And you can send us an email to hello@rivie.com.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much, Arshad. This was just a really enjoyable conversation. We got to dig into some really interesting corners, especially, even the coffee corner, which is kind of fun. This was a really, really terrific time. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Again, I'm Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun. If you're looking for some help managing your cash flow, financial models, please come and check us out. We'd love to help you. And until the next episode, thanks for Arshad again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Blaine, for having me.